Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company. They offer free checking with industry-leading mobile banking. Who you choose to bank with can make all the difference. Visit firstbank.com to learn more.
What's up, Okie Nation, and welcome into episode 429 of the Tech Sideline podcast. Whit Babcock's meeting with the Board of Visitors has come to a close, which means it's time to unpack it all here at Tech Sideline. All that and much more coming up on episode 429 of the Tech Sideline podcast, which starts right now. And we're recording on Tuesday, August 19th, 2025 from the Tech Solutions Studio in the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. Remember to like, subscribe, and refer the show to a friend. I'm your host, Carter Hill. To my left is our managing editor, Mr. David Cunningham. Across the way is our senior staff writer, Andy Bitter. Our director of media, Nick Brown, is producing behind the scenes. And we are so thrilled you could join us on your Tuesday morning. Guys, how are you? How was your weekend? I know a little bit eventful in Radford yesterday. We'll get to that in a little bit, but
good.
Last normal weekend in Blacksburg before the students come back in town.
I know.
Yeah, I went rafting down the New River.
Did you really?
With some neighbors. It was really fun.
Really?
I'd never done that before. It was an enjoyable time. So
okay,
I highly recommend it.
Okay,
if you have a seasoned guide to take you down there, I could never do it myself.
Sounds a good time. I kind of relaxed at home this weekend. Watched a great NASCAR race at Richmond this weekend.
Oh, you went to?
I did not go. No, I watched it on television.
Oh, I see.
It was great. So yeah, pretty nice. And yesterday, the meeting, I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah. Let's get into that. Okay, I want to start with this. So we talked about this on the podcast last week. Again, the meeting had not taken place yet. And now, Monday afternoon, Whit Babcock met with the Board of Visitors at the Virginia Tech, or rather at the Pete Dye River course owned by Virginia Tech in Radford, and talked about Virginia Tech's current positioning in college athletics and where the Hokies need to go to get to where they want to go. So just want to start with this. What were you all's overall takeaways? You guys were both there in person. Nick was as well. What can you guys take away from the meeting you all saw in person yesterday?
Yeah, I think it was sort of a sounding of alarms. That's what I wrote my column about yesterday. I think this is something that, Whit Babcock has talked about with the board over the years, but it's reached a critical point. This can't be ignored anymore. And maybe I haven't paid attention to those conversations in the past. I don't know if it was not forceful enough or not clear enough, or he, didn't make the issue clear enough for the people in the board. But I don't know how anybody could sit through that presentation yesterday and not get the picture about where Virginia Tech stands financially within the ACC compared to its peers. They need more money. They need to find more money somewhere, whether that's creating revenue through different things, whether it's direct institutional support from Virginia Tech. To stay competitive in the current model of NCAA sports, you're going to need more money coming in than they have right now. And I think he said it, our expectations are higher than our resources right now, something to that effect. I forget the exact quote. And a lot of people will be like, oh, you're part of the problem in that whole thing. And there's some valid complaints in this whole thing. But in a bigger picture, the better resource schools will be more competitive. And Virginia Tech needs to be better resourced to stay in the same range as those other schools to be competitive within the NCAA.
He said resources equal success. And he said our expectations do not match our resources. Yeah. And I thought the Board of Visitors was pretty receptive. Listening to some of the BOV members ask questions both in that session and then when Amy Sebring, the Virginia Tech COO, spoke afterwards, and they talked a lot about athletics, and everybody kind of just sat and listened to Whit for about an hour, and then there was a little bit of a Q&A portion, but that kind of the next session kind of turned into more of a discussion, and I thought that was pretty interesting, just hearing some of their ideas go back and forth. They're trying to come up with any which way to figure out, hey, how can we come up with more revenue? It doesn't seem like can we? It's a how do we? I thought they were pretty receptive, but yeah, I mean, some of Whit's quotes are pretty damning. Just kind of making it point blank, quite honestly. He said, I'm glad to see us closing the gap with UVA, talking about the student fees, but he called it a new kind of arms race.
Yeah.
talking about budget and resources. So,
if we don't radically leap forward now, we're likely sealing our fate for years to come.
I mean, those are
That sounds like a Star Wars.
I was
going
going to say in the opening,
like a
Star Wars
very
movie,
dramatic.
or like a James Bond.
James Bond,
like,
yeah.
Yeah, and perhaps it's over the top to put it in those terms, but this is the way the game is played now. And you look at the way that the ACC is allocating revenue within its conference. You have to be good to get the top tier dollars in the conference. I mean, there's a 30 million difference between what could be the top tier and the bottom tier of ACC payouts from TV revenue. 65 million down to 35 million. $30 million gap. That's a pretty big difference when you're trying to budget and figure out things, how to pay for things. So, the better you are, the more eyeballs you generate on TV, the better you do in postseason. All those things add up to more money that you can receive from the conference. So when you say it costs to win and it costs to lose, you have to pay to be able to stay in that upper echelon and win. And if you don't, you're going to get even less money than you would have gotten previously.
Well, I mentioned you guys were both there in person. I want to ask this question. What was the atmosphere like in there? Like, to see the Board of Visitors kind of take in all that information. It was you guys, David Teal, I think Damian Sordelet was there as well.
Mark Berman.
Yeah, Mark Berman was there. What was the atmosphere
It was
like?
boring.
Was it really?
Don't act like it was this big dramatic
okay.
moment or something like that. It's a boardroom overlooking the river at a golf course.
Yeah.
Like a bunch of people. Like this isn't. It wasn't like this is the only presentation that goes on. There's a stream of people coming in there, all giving presentations about how they need more money for stuff. That's what the Board of Visitors meetings are for. And then nobody comes in and is like, you know what? We got a little bit too much last semester. Here's some back. We don't need this. It never works like that. It's always people asking for more money in that situation. Now, in this situation, athletics is asking for a lot more money. And I don't want to confuse people here. It's not like the Board of Visitors just gets there on Wednesday and goes 50 million more for the athletic department. Who says yes? Who says no? It doesn't work like that. You don't flip a switch and all of a sudden there's just, it's a fully funded athletic department. But, you make them aware of what the issues are. They vote on different things. They push things in different directions. It's going to be a slow process to try to build up and ideally, in Babcock's mind, make up that $50 million gap or however much they'd like to close in to get up on the leaders of the ACC. But, it's not some big dramatic moment like, they will have the vote Wednesday and we will have the answer of whether this passes or doesn't. Like, no, this is a process and this is a whole boardroom thing. It's not made for TV drama. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think Whit stood up there and presented for 61 minutes, and I don't think he didn't field any questions during it. It was just him talking. And then
there was like 20 minutes afterwards where he took a few comments.
It was like 23 minutes of Q&A. So we know how great of a public speaker Whit is. Imagine Whit just standing up there for 61 minutes. I mean, some of the quotes he said, some of the stuff he said was pretty noteworthy. But it wasn't like it was just this giant debate. The Sebring came up and presented the COO and talked about some stuff, and that I thought was just Mark Berman and I left in there, and I thought some of that stuff was more interesting because there was a lot more discussion, a lot more chiming in. President Sands chimed in a little bit. He touched on, and of course he's the chair of the D1 board of directors. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So he has a pretty good perspective on things. He kind of discussed a little bit about what other states do that are advantageous for their Power 4 schools. So I thought after that, Amy Sebring, she straight up asked the Board of Visitors, how much should we be investing? And they had a slide up, and it's basically a breakdown of football and men's basketball budgets compared to all the other public schools. How much should we be investing? And should it just be football or should it be men's basketball too? And it sparked this discussion of people trying to bounce ideas off one another and go, where can we find this money?
Yeah. So I want to kind of backtrack a little bit to last week. We did a podcast last week about this. And again, this was pre-presentation. I asked about Virginia Tech's budget specifically. Virginia Tech's current athletic budget is $122 million, 14th in the ACC, worst amongst ACC public schools. I asked, were you surprised about that number? And I know that number had been semi out there in the past per USA Today. But I guess more so what I want to ask is, why is Virginia Tech in that situation? There are 4 private schools beneath Virginia Tech. 3 of those 4 have got to be Boston College, Wake Forest, and Syracuse. I don't know about the 4th. But why is Virginia Tech currently 14th when it comes to budget in the ACC?
You know, there are some limitations on revenue that they produce. I think you look at the biggest one, and it's going to be contributions. I mean, you look at the USA Today chart. They just don't have a fundraising arm that gets as much money as other schools. And I'm not putting that directly on the fundraisers. It might just be the alumni base that Virginia Tech has. It's not quite, Clemson's been doing this for a while. And they, for a while they kind of struggle with it, and then they cranked it up, and you've seen how they've done lately. And it's a significant amount of money that they are bringing in. I mean, to the point where it's like $30 million at least difference a year annually in what they're bringing in than Virginia Tech. So when you talk about, look at this thing, $190 million. This is operating budget estimates as of July 1st, 2025. Clemson's at $190, Virginia Tech's at $122. So that's what, $68 million difference. I mean, 30, 40 million possibly. I haven't seen the updated numbers on donations. Might just come strictly from contributions.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that's a big deal. They are limited. While Lane Stadium is great, it is not quite as big as a school like Clemson, 80,000 plus seats or something like that. They've added more luxury seating and stuff like that. Castle Coliseum does not have any of those luxury seating type situations, so that's not really a revenue generator from that sense that a lot of other schools have for their basketball. So it's little things like that add up across the whole thing. And then direct institutional support. I know the student fees are one thing. That is something that is, the school has raised, but that is being paid by students who are coming in. There's also just direct institutional support that you can get. That you look at a school like UVA and some of the slides that Babcock had in his presentation, there's more just coming directly from the school. Now, I'm not sure exactly how that's allocated or things like that, but that is a line item that exists for some schools. That with Virginia Tech, it's Whit Babcock has said it a couple of times, it's sort of a break-even proposition between campus and athletics. And I think that's where some of the frustration comes on his part, is he'd like a little bit more help from just the campus side, the university side, and helping support an athletics program, which, he points out, they can coexist. Athletics and academics can coexist, and they can be mutually beneficial. And he pointed out the women's basketball Final Four round a couple years ago. He called it a 3-week infomercial for the school, and it was. You can talk to anybody who was around in Blacksburg before Michael Vick was here. Does the 460 bypass exist if Michael Vick wasn't here? This is the kind of stuff that very, very much put Virginia Tech on the map from a national sense. And you see that in applications and enrollment, and it filters down to the academic side of it. And I think some academic types maybe don't want to admit that athletics pushes it sometimes, but it does bring attention to a school that it otherwise wouldn't normally get.
Yeah, I think Andy summed it up pretty well. A lot of little things. On the Castle point, something I included in a story that's coming out later today, that Whit talked about. Castle is a great home court advantage, but it only seats 8,925 people, and there's no suites or club.
Yeah.
Babcock said the Hokies can only generate $3 million per year in Castle for men's basketball, whereas comparison, North Carolina, NC State, and Virginia do 15, 12, and 8 million respectively.
And North Carolina doesn't even have luxury
North Carolina
either,
probably
which is crazy.
They could definitely use a new stadium after going down there.
But continue, sorry.
So that's just a good example of one little thing could get you just that much more money. Whit has this list of, you can call it a list of 52 if you want, the list of 52 million, just the requests, and kind of the list of investments. That there are a bunch of little things. It's not like there are very few that are giant, right?
Yeah.
And so as a result, it's what Andy talked about, where it's this little thing here, this little thing here, this little thing. If you tweak it, and the institutional support is huge. But I thought Whit kind of outlined all that stuff pretty well. And it seemed like the Board of Visitors was pretty receptive to it. And one of the conversations they had after Whit left, when it was just in the Sebring presentation, was some of the BOV members were, I don't want to say confused, but they were trying to visualize the money Whit's talking about of going back and forth, because athletics has to be has to stand on its own. The university subsidizes it, and then athletics pays it back. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So as a result, it's kind of a break even there a little bit. And that's what Whit's talking about. And they were trying to figure out, well, how does that work? There's no chart visualizing it, but that's required by law. Like athletics has to be self-sufficient. So it's just this weird formula where you have to make the money work. And there was a quote that I'll include from Simon Allen, the Virginia Tech CFO. He noted that in fiscal year 2021, the budget for athletics was $89 million. So that's a 63% increase over the last 5 years. Okay. Because Whit said in fiscal year 2026, it's going to be $144 million. That's what they're projecting. So 122 to 144. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's tracking. So Allen said, quote, "It's not that it hasn't increased. I think the discussion may be whether it needs to increase more, but we certainly haven't been asleep at the switch. Now, whether it's enough is a question for the board." So you can tell that everybody's trying to wrap their head around how can we come up with more, right? It's not like a boom, snap of the fingers and there's money.
So you mentioned they're going to be at 144 this year, it seems like. Whit Babcock said they need to get to 200 million. How possible is that going to be, do you think?
Yeah, that was sort of if there was a made-for-TV moment in the meeting, and there wasn't, but that was it. Jim Miller, the board's finance and resource management committee chair, sort of got to brass tacks at the end. He's like, what is your ask? What are you asking for dollars-wise here? And Babcock says, if you want to compete at the top of the ACC athletically, you need to be near 200 million. I don't know if that's true necessarily, just looking at the numbers. But again, you don't ask for less than, you shoot for the moon on this stuff and then be happy with what you get after that. So, Clemson, again, I go back to these operating budget estimates from last year, 190 million, Florida State, 170 million. Everybody is going to go up by 22 million, basically, with the addition to the House. So those are up around and over 200 million. So I think that's sort of where you get that $200 million figure. Now, when you have an athletics budget like that, I think it's all about windows. Like, how open is your competitive window on stuff? And it feels like Clemson and Florida State, their window is open all the time. It's like baseball. The Dodgers' window is open all the time. They have a payroll like that.
That is true.
You look at teams like, Milwaukee, currently doing very well, had to build up to this over time. Cleveland's like that, the Twins, all sorts of schools are like that. Clemson, Florida State's window is always open because of the money that they have and that they're pouring into that program. Pitt, I know they won the ACC once. I know it's possible, but what was Pitt's window? It was basically that year with Kenny Pickett, hit the top. We haven't seen like a Narduzzi dynasty built off of that whole thing. So I think when you say 200 million, you're talking about sustainability and being able to do it year after year after year. I think you can do it in a one-off if the stars align and things come together. But what Babcock has outlined is how you can compete annually, which I think is what the expectation is, what people have around here. So you want to compete annually for titles, certainly in football, where they've won ACC titles before. So that's where that figure comes from. Now, again, you don't flip a switch and just add $56 million out of nowhere. That's a lot of money. I mean, that's more than a third of what your budget is already. So increasing it by that much would be a very hard thing to do, but you can chip away at it in certain ways. Could the athletic subsidy be a little bit more? Sure, there are limits to how much you can raise that per year, and certainly the board doesn't want to, put this, undue burden on students to be like, oh, you're the ones paying these players for this whole thing. But it could be higher. It's still the lowest in Virginia, which Virginia Tech likes to trumpet all the time. But that could be a little bit higher. There could be more direct institutional support. There could be different ways they look at scholarships and how much that costs the athletic department overall. There are other plans that they've put out there. They've talked about that like multi-use area on Chicken Hill, the lot over there, something similar to what they're building at Iowa State, something called Sci-Town, which is just like
That's kind of cool.
just like a. Is it be like bars?
Entertainment district?
Entertainment district.
Yeah.
Like
it's like what
it can
Milwaukee
be pretty cool. I mean, that's
Atlanta have.
you're going to get more revenue out of that than you will just a parking lot.
Yeah.
Now those people have to park somewhere, so I don't know where they're going to be parking. I don't know. I live in Christiansburg. Maybe I can sell my yard for people parking.
Yeah,
there if they
exactly.
wanna drive over, but you know, that's a revenue generator. How much money could you make off of that per year? You upgrade Castle a little bit. Some luxury seating and a renovation there. Yeah, there's an upfront cost, but then you're generating more revenue than you are in the current state of the building. So I think there are ways to chip away at it. I think it needs everybody's pulling in the same direction on this thing. It needs alignment, and that means the athletic director, it means athletics, it means the school president, it means the board of administration, it means business people in the area all pulling in the same direction on that. And I think you look at a school like Clemson. I did a story from my previous employer. I think it was in 2017, 28. Nah, it might have been later than that. It was basically a decade of divergence, so it must have been around 2021, I think. Between Clemson and Virginia Tech, and how they kind of went separate directions. And I talked with Tim Beret, who's a longtime sports information director at Clemson, knows everything about Clemson. And his big thing was about, every major advancement you've seen with Clemson over time came with some sort of investment. They put a big investment into their fundraising arm. You saw that pay off over time. They put a big investment into their stadium. They built this whole, end zone section that was luxury seated added, and all sorts of other things that you can have in the bowels of the stadium. That added a big revenue piece to Clemson's whole thing. And I can't remember all the things they went through, but you look at what they invested in the staff with Dabo Swinney. I mean, they invest more money in assistant staff than anybody in the country, and that pays off down the line. So there's a lot of ways to invest into the program that maybe it's a short-term setback initially, but then you see the dividends of that further down the line.
I'll sum a lot of really good points Andy made. I've two quotes from Whit that kind of sum up all that. Babcock said, "We have skin in the game." He said, "We need to be all in," which is funny because that's kind of what Clemson says. We need to be all in.
Yeah.
Wait a second. When I covered Auburn, there was a big debate about who was the all-in originators, because Auburn definitely went all in with the all-in phrase during the Cam Newton year, and all the Clemson people were like, we came up with that. It's like, first of all, that's a poker term. Second of all, you didn't come up with that. You're not the first school to say we're all in on this. It's one of 6 catchphrases that you can have for your football team. We got to be tough. We got to be hard, tough, grit, all in. Like, there's only so many phrases that you have. But sorry.
No, that's good. Whit didn't really go over the future revenue solutions, but if you remember from the presentation, he listed about 14 potential, like enhanced premium experiences, mixed use real estate, stuff like that.
Concerts in
Lane. That fell under the special events, facility utilization, organizational strategy. I mean, there was a bunch of stuff on there. A quote that kind of summarizes all that up, Carter. Quote, "We can't keep running the same financial playbook, which is decades old, or continue to do things the way they've always been done."
That's sort of, for the longest time, Whit's go-to phrase is like, you don't need the most money to compete. It's always sort of the thing. It's like, we do well enough with the resources that we have. And this is sort of a different tune or a different, talking point that he's putting out there. Is like, we need to invest more to be able to compete with these. It's like, his line used to be like, Florida or Texas spends the most money on anything, but they don't win all the titles every year. So, it's possible to do it. And now it's like, we need to catch up with these schools to be able to compete with them. So it's definitely a different direction that they veered with this whole thing.
So where does the Hokie Club come into play here? Where's the Hokie Club come into play?
I mean, that's a fundraising one.
Yeah, you mentioned fundraising at Clemson.
Where's Chris? He would have strong opinions.
Chris Coleman would be like,
Chris would go
put it under
he might even
university
get the red shirt
advancement.
lights just going, he gets hot in the collar about it.
By the way, I didn't realize there was an actual siren,
that alarm
that
was
went along
no
with it.
joke. No joke. I was driving the other day. I wanted to hear it. I was like, whoa.
People on YouTube said it was startling.
Really?
So
Okay.
I don't know.
Let's not scare people
I
today.
didn't listen to it.
But yeah, I mean, the Hokie Club, I thought David Teal had a really great piece in the Daily Press in Virginia Pilot a couple weeks ago. He spoke with Whit about just how important, and Whit's talking about the Hokie Club is the center of everything we do.
Yeah.
And this was before the BOV slides and whatnot came out. But like the Hokie Club has to be the center of Virginia Tech generating more revenue. That's the bottom line. Like you can hold concerts and you can make do mixed use real estate and have a side town, or do what the Packers kind of do at beside the stadium, or you can get you can raise student fees and you can do all this stuff, but it doesn't matter if like gifts, as Andy said about Clemson, are what drives the boat. And if you can do a better job of fundraising directly, I mean, the Drive for 25 was such a big thing a couple of years ago, and they did a really good job of completing it. If the Hokie Club could be that driving force in this revenue generation era, I think Virginia Tech would be much better off for it. But as Chris Coleman would say, it feels like they're kind of just there a little bit.
Well, some numbers from that piece that Teal wrote that you mentioned. They $43 million combined to the Hokie Club in 24-25. That was one of their best years ever. And I guess there was like a $10 million gift that sort of bumped that number up. It's still not great compared to peers. It's still not keeping pace with them. And the numbers are high in terms of membership. The dollar figure is not quite as high as you would hope. So Babcock has said that he wants to increase contributions by $20 million.
Yeah.
So you're talking about another 50% increase. I mean, that's just tough to do. Now, win some games would certainly help. A lot easier to sell a winning product than a losing one in this whole thing. But it's also just being smarter about how you ask for money. I think there's a lot of data-driven things that they need to do. It's the challenge of all fundraising is how do you get more money out of people and keep coming back and asking people for money. And it's a real challenge in this day and age because, for like a year or two there, it's like, donate to the Hokie Club, but also donate to Triumph NIL and donate to this thing and this thing. It's like, well, where am I sending my money? How many different places do I have to send money to support this team that I want to do this with? So I think perhaps with the revenue sharing and everything, a lot of it coming in-house, I guess collectives still exist and can still pay players as much as they want, I guess. I don't know. I thought there were going to be rules against this whole thing, but perhaps that offers some clarity. Like, no, donate here to the Hokie Club. We will then disperse the money as needed. I mean, I think people want to, and I think they would be more inclined to if it was a winning product that they had on the field. I mean, that's the bottom line with all this stuff is you can talk about how can you get more money here and more money here. If they win some freaking games, it would certainly help. I mean, just from exposure standpoint, it helps you with viewership, postseason success. It helps you there. Everybody wants to be a part of a winning product.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, my gosh, it's been 9 years since they've won 10 games and played in the ACC championship game. It's been 15 years since they've won an ACC championship. I've covered this program for going into my 15th year now. Let's not look at the timelines of when that fell off the cliff. I mean, winning helps so much. And we can talk about all the things Clemson has done. And yes, they invest in stuff. They've also won a couple national championships. Yes, yeah. And how many ACC championships? Yes, people want to open up their wallets when that's the case. And they don't want to. When you're going, man, another 6-6 season in the Military Bowl? We've been there. We've done that. It doesn't excite people.
On that topic, Andy mentioned the viewership and how important it is to generate money in that way now. Something Whit touched on yesterday. In his slides, he had an ACC viewership distribution, illustrative example, verbal update. It was the list of all the schools and basically a bunch of blanks. And he kind of explained that the ACC's yearly payouts will be around 30 to 34 million instead of 43 million because you're distributing it unequally now. As a result, there are additional opportunities to add a ton. He said the top schools, schools like 1, 2, 3, 4, could add additional potential $25 million in revenue. So you combine, say, 34 to 25. you're talking about being close to the Big Ten and SEC schools in terms of what their payout is. And even the institutions that are like 5, 6, 7, they could add potential 15 million. But if you are 9th or 10th, 11th, you're kind of just treading water a little bit. You're breaking even. Whit said the Hokies would be around 9th or 10th right now. You're talking about breaking even. And then if you're 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, you're falling way behind. So
there's a viewership period already baked in.
Yes.
The 5-year rolling average. And Tech has not done great in those kind of viewership numbers. Now, this year should help in terms of the South Carolina opener. I mean, that's going to get a ton of eyeballs.
Right.
I don't know how the calculations will come out afterwards. They got a Friday night game against Cal. They play Florida State, Miami later in the year. Those are usually sort of anticipated games that people want to watch. It will be interesting to see how they attack future schedules. Next year's schedule does not look all too enticing for stuff. What is it? Maryland and then
ODU, JMU, VMI.
ODU and VMI.
Yeah, that's not great. Opening with VMI on September 5th. I mean, think about the opening weekend and how much excitement there is about football. And we want to watch our team, and this South Carolina game is a perfect example of that. It's like that's an opportunity to strike when people are into it, they're focused, they're going to watch their team. And if you put them in a highlight spot like that, think of what the West Virginia opener did at FedEx, what that Labor Day game against Florida State did when everybody thought that Florida State was good and they weren't. It was two bad teams playing each other as opposed to this, top 25 matchup between teams. But that's when people really tune into that kind of stuff. And if you can get a standalone game like that, I think that's what I mean, they're still working on schedules going up, and it sounded like Whit sort of has something that they were working on.
He mentioned that they're still working on 26.
Yeah. So hopefully something changes in those trio of games against the state schools there, because that is just snoozeville. I know it's going to be James Madison's going to be pumped for that game. That's going to be like their Super Bowl. It's like, remember the last time we played? How about that? And, James Madison would put up. Well, they have 70 something
against
on Carolina last year.
Yeah.
They're going to be primed for that game. So maybe that's not one you change, because I think that could actually draw some local interest, certainly, within the state. But VMI, that one feels like a tough one. And I know there's a history there with the Keydets, and it's, historically, going way back, one of the more traditional rivals that Virginia Tech's had. But, man, if you replace that September 5th VMI game with, like, West Virginia or something. So I haven't looked at the other school schedule, so I don't know what works out. But there feels like there's an opportunity for a more marquee game there than that.
Yeah, I was going to ask. There's no way that schedule holds up, right? But the JMU game, what's interesting to Andy's point is if Virginia Tech and JMU don't play next year, you know what Twitter's going to look like on the James Madison side? They're ducking us again. We beat them there in 2000. We've seen it with ODU the last couple weeks.
Yeah, I mean,
you can't worry about that.
I mean, who cares?
But
right, you can't worry about that. But still, be interesting.
But it all goes back now to viewership, and we talked about this last week on our podcast. I mean, Whit Babcock came out and said this is the value for being on a linear network, ABC or ESPN. And the more you win games, the more you're going to play on that, which means your viewership goes up. I mean, the Hokies, if you look at the viewership chart that was in that presentation, Tech was 4th in 2018 and 19 in football, 5th in 21, 7th in 22, and then fell off the last 2 years. And, if you don't do good numbers this year, you're going to fall even farther behind. So it's imperative that you get good viewers. Like Andy said, South Carolina and all those games in November will certainly help. But you see, it's like this cycle, right? Where it all comes back to winning. It all comes back to winning football games.
Yeah.
And the more you win football games, the more money you're going to make because the more viewers you're going to have. And in turn, the more people will want to donate. It's all tied together.
Circle of life. By the way, I just looked up West Virginia's schedule next year. They open on September 5th against Alabama at home. And then they play 2 weeks later, they play Virginia and Charlotte. So without major reshuffling, it's not going to be West Virginia.
So it is short notice to schedule somebody for next year.
Tennessee has an open date.
Tennessee's
next
an
year.
open date.
Yeah.
But you've always said that Virginia Tech and Tennessee
Just
don't
saying.
play at home
Tennessee
and home, right?
has, it would have to be a neutral site because I don't think
More
Tennessee
likely than West Virginia, though.
Yeah,
at this moment.
West Virginia is not going to be a possibility next year.
But it is short notice. So, like, let's go to what some other schools have done within the ACC. Is there an opportunity to maybe schedule another school in the league that's not on your schedule in a non-conference game? Because they're going to be in that same boat.
But I don't know.
I don't know if there's a school that Virginia Tech could do that with that would draw that much interest. Like when like Carolina did it with Wake Forest, I think, and that's a state rivalry. It's a game that people in the state like to see. Who would Virginia Tech do that with? They already play Virginia every year. You're not going to schedule Wake Forest in a non-conference just because it's an easy one to get to. So I don't know if there's a school necessarily that you would do that to that would be willing to do it. That's like, all right, that moves the needle.
Yeah, and at least in basketball, I mean, Mike Young told us that they were interested in scheduling Pitt because the Pitt's the one weird team they don't play this year,
Which is so dumb.
and the ACC was kind of just like, we'd like people to not rack up losses against other conference teams that they could help it, just save that one game. So yeah, I don't know but
how does Pitt get left out the schedule? It's like the closest school other than UVA and the Carolina ones. Like that's easy to get to. Wouldn't you lop off Stanford or something like that?
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird.
Let's take a quick break to hear from one of our sponsors here at TechSideline.com.
Are you ready for a custom home tailored to your distinctive lifestyle? At Tyrus Homes, a leading custom home builder in the New River Valley, we pride ourselves on crafting exceptional residences that our clients love to call home. Whether you're a first-time buyer, a growing family in search for more room, an active adult seeking a relaxing retreat, or looking for a higher-end custom home that offers luxury and sophistication, we have the perfect solution for you. Discover how you can bring your dream home to life at TyrusHomes.com. That's TYRIS Homes.com.
All right, welcome back. Episode 429 of the Tech Sideline podcast. While we were break, we almost solved the scheduling dilemma, or at least Andy did.
Almost. I think we did solve the scheduling.
Okay. Explain,
Tennessee plays Furman on September 5th in 2026, and Virginia Tech plays VMI. VMI can play Furman, and then Virginia Tech can play Tennessee somewhere. I mean, they're not going to play home and home site, but find a neutral site and do it there. The Titan Stadium won't be open. The new one won't be open at that point, unfortunately. But
I was going to say, you needed a redemption trip to Nashville after getting sick last year.
I made it out for Gio's birthday. That was
you did
was
come out that night. That's right.
They can play at the old Titan Stadium. That's not like this decrepit place. I think they've played at FedEx before, so they've seen the worst of the NFL stadiums. They can go to one that's slightly, I don't think it's this like falling down building. So yeah, they should play it in Nashville or something like that. I think that would work.
That was a fun trip. I forgot you were sick for that, but you did come out that night.
That was a fun time.
You came out too.
You got to rally sometimes.
Had to rally. Yeah. Okay, so one thing I want to go back to, and you talked about spending in football. Whit Babcock, one of the specific quotes that he mentioned was, and I quote, Cal and Stanford did not go all in, and they got left behind. I don't know if Auburn or Clemson wants to claim all in, but they did not. Cal and Stanford did not go all in. He was referencing football specifically. Has Virginia Tech gone all in football? Where is Virginia Tech from a spending standpoint with the football program?
It's pretty good. I mean, they're up there near the top. I mean, they're miles behind Clemson and Florida State. But again, those are schools that just have a different amount of resources available to them right now. But I think it's Clemson, Florida State at the top of public schools, at least. And then there's like a $20 million gap, and you get around the $40 million range. And it's like Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech at the top of that second tier. So I think it's, top third of the conference still in terms of football investment, which, considering where the overall budget is, I mean, that's a pretty good chunk of the overall athletics budget. So I don't know if you can look at football and say it's been underfunded at all. It's pretty good. Could it be more? Yes, but is it more so that you can double Brent Pry's salary? I mean, you can make it look like it's more if you're doing this stuff without really improving the program in any tangible way. So I think it's been funded enough, or it's certainly funded enough to do better than what the football program has done the last couple of years.
Yeah, if you look at one of the slides in there is VT versus ACC Publics expenses by sport at football, men's basketball, women's basketball. But in terms of football, you got Clemson, Florida State, they're in the 60s in terms of millions. Virginia Tech and North Carolina are both at 40. And then everybody else, except for Georgia Tech, which is at 41, everybody else is below. But yeah, as Andy said, like it'll be very interesting to see how. I mean, I feel like Tech's sitting okay for football. It's a lot of just winning games. Yeah. Like I don't know that it's like, oh my gosh, we need to donate this much more. But in terms of athletics as a whole and revenue sharing and whatnot, right? Does that make sense? Like it's not.
You don't need to invest $20 million more dollars in football to stop Rutgers from running the same play throughout the entire game. Like there are things they can do that it's not money related that the program could be on better footing right now.
Yeah, I think they'll have better success if they just win games, and they don't necessarily need more money to do that.
Yep. Okay, so do you think the presentation got the attention of the Board of Visitors?
I do. Okay. I thought. Particularly with the discussion I mentioned before, I thought a lot of those people in that room were pretty intrigued, like more very curious, like trying to figure out like how can we make this work. Some of the examples they used, somebody talked about. They were kind of just like throwing ideas out there, right? And I guess that's something you have to do because it's every little bit counts. The possibility of cutting campus programs came up with the context of could that money go to athletics instead? It was more of is this a possibility? And Sebring mentioned that I think that could be potentially like $10 million. Though those programs would have to have like unrestricted budgets, as she put it. Another Board of Visitors member asked, in terms of ticket pricing, asking about face value and like, could Virginia Tech Athletics take a piece of the face value off of tickets, like pocket that, right? Like, and a quote that I included in my story, Sebring said, "We're still trying to work through how to fill the bucket," which makes me feel that makes it seem like to me that it's not a if, but like a kind of like a when and a how, if that makes sense. Yeah. Like that they're going to do it. You asked about the BOV. I thought there were two interesting quotes. So Jeannie Stosser said, talking about, this was in the Q&A with Whit. She said, "I'm surprised where we are. That's just my opinion." Kind of saying that she was shocked Virginia Tech was as competitive as it is. And she said, "I don't think you're out of line with your request." And then Sandy Davis, the vice rector, said, "I think Virginia Tech would have a large empty hole if we didn't have athletics. I don't want to see Virginia Tech at the bottom underneath our peers. There are many ways we could come up with funds. You've mentioned different percentages and revenues from licensing and so forth. We need to put our thinking caps on. We want to get back to number one. We don't want to be the lowest one on the scale. We don't want to see that again. You need more than this, and you're always so respectful," talking to Whit, "when you request it, and I thoroughly appreciate that. But I think all of us have heard a wonderful presentation today. It's given us a lot to think about." So I think that kind of sums up, at least from one of the big BOV members, just kind of their thoughts and going forward.
Okay. Anything else to add, Andy?
Yeah, I just think, like I said before, I don't think you can sit through that presentation and not get the point.
Okay.
And these are smart people on the Board of Visitors. And I don't know what past presentations, how it's been presented, how forceful they've been with requests, how much they've sounded the alarms on this stuff. But I did sit through that one, and it was pretty obvious the point that they were trying to make is like, here's where it is, here's where Virginia Tech is, and here's the level they need to raise it to. And I think it got a lot of people's attention.
Okay. Anything else on this presentation yesterday? This is a big deal. I think, and I realized it last week, but when you see all these national people talking about this and how it affects the ACC, I mean, that kind of gets your attention a little bit if you're a Virginia Tech person.
I think the biggest thing, there are a lot of people wondering, I think we talked about this a little bit last week, but there are a lot of people I've seen on social media, of course, why has this not been presented before? And you have to understand that a lot of this information was not available like before last year. We're talking about the House settlement, which came out this year. We're talking about the ACC settlement with Clemson and Florida State. A lot, in terms of rev share, in terms of the unequal distribution of revenue in the ACC, a lot of that is new. Now, there's some of this stuff that Virginia Tech probably should have been doing a while ago. The future schedules. Like, Virginia Tech should have been more proactive probably with its future schedules over the last couple of years.
Well, that paradigm's shifted.
Yes.
It used to be about how can you get enough home games, and now it's how can you get enough eyeballs. So where you're getting money from is changed a little bit.
Yeah. And part of that, of course, is Florida State Clemson. But there are a lot of little things, Carter. Like, you can always spend more time finding more revenue. There are some things here that Virginia Tech could have been doing a while ago. But there's a lot of this stuff that's brand new. And it seemed like kind of like the right time to bring it up to the board, considering how fresh some of this stuff is, the settlements and whatnot. It's like this is the first opportunity to really lay it all out there and say, here's the current landscape. Here's where we are. Whit basically said, it's a fork in the road. And you included the quote in your story, I think, Andy, I'm not sure if I'm even going to be here or not.
Yeah.
But and the crying wolf quote. I mean, there's a lot of stuff there where Whit's basically just like, I'm not going to, who knows how much longer I'm going to be here? The bottom line is this is the position Virginia Tech is in. Do you want to do something about it or not?
Yeah, very true.
I think the college sports landscape has changed so radically recently. And I think in Virginia Tech for the longest time, there was sort of a pride in doing more with less. Like, we don't have the biggest budget, but, through grit, determination, and blue collar. I mean, they carry a lunch pail around, for God's sake, as the defensive token. Like this, like, we're just regular Joes who punch in every day and go to work. And, like, you don't think big money, really, when you think about that kind of stuff. But, I think there was a path to being competitive in the past where that was it. You could find the undervalued guys. You could develop them over time. Now money is really a really big deal in this whole thing. It's like, you found an undervalued guy. Well, as soon as he starts to break out, somebody's going to pay him more. So you got to be able to be ready to match that whole thing. You got to go out and invest in these recruits ahead of time. You can't just be like, I know a lot of recruits say this is home and all that stuff. It's like, this is home, but what's the paycheck that comes with that as well? That's part of the game now. And, I think there are some athletic departments out there that are like, well, that's not how it's done. We just don't do it that way. That's the reality of sports these days, whether you want to admit it or not. This is essentially a minor league sport at this whole time.
I do like the 3-week infomercial point about Virginia Tech women's basketball. And you mentioned it in your story the other day, last week. I mean, he referenced George Mason, 2006, basketball, VCU, 2011, basketball, LSU. I mean, LSU in 2020 benefited from enrollment was benefited because they won the national title in 2020, Cincinnati in 2021. When you're talking to academically focused people and you can drive home the enrollment point, talking about the success of Virginia Tech athletics, I think that's a big deal in that presentation. I know Andy touched
said
on that a little
Clemson
bit.
yesterday too.
Clemson?
I mean, Boise State.
Boise State,
What would
yeah.
Boise State be? I got a lot of replies from people at Boise State that said that, the football program's helped a lot.
Yeah.
I'm sure Gonzaga being a basketball power, it's like, who would have heard of Gonzaga otherwise?
Yeah.
I mean, you see
All due respect to John Stockton, but this recent run is certainly helped them.
But you see, particularly with a lot of these, I mean, you see with smaller schools every year, particularly in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah,
like a
St.
Florida,
Peter's, Fairleigh
like
Dickinson.
a Florida Gulf Coast.
Yep.
You go on this run and it just draws eyeballs. And obviously that's on a much smaller scale. But we're talking about, I mean, Andy mentioned the Michael Vick example. I'm sure people at Virginia Tech can look back between that time period from 1998 to 2008 and look at all that success and go, man, our applications did this because of, there is that trade-off.
Yeah.
And it goes back to everybody pulling in the same direction.
What's coming up on TechSideline.com? Very busy week. Very, very busy
More
week.
Board of Visitors stuff. I mean, again, my story will be up later. Chris has some stuff. We got football too, by the way. Like, there's
we
football
have
stuff.
two other podcasts scheduled this week to talk about actual football. So if you're getting angry at us for not talking about football in this one, there's stuff coming.
Yeah.
2 practices this week, closing out the camp portion of preseason. I talked to Shane Beamer yesterday too, so I'll have a story on him at some point. So it's getting close. Less than 2 weeks here.
Yeah.
What about you, Nick? Sorry, David, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I got a women's soccer story that I'm going to write tomorrow. They got a big game against Clemson on Thursday. They're 2-0. They put up 5 goals on Sunday.
Which is a non-conference game against an ACC foe.
It is, yes. You talk about wanting to. I don't know how they got that workaround, but Clemson's supposed to be really good.
Okay.
So
okay.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, a lot of good stuff. And Nick's over here pumping out the content for us.
Yes.
Because this podcast today, and then Chris will be back on the next 2 days to break down the offense and defense for football. So, I mean, crazy thing that game week is next week.
It is crazy. All right,
we'll be in Atlanta next week.
I know.
Well, David kind of stole my whole show there, but yeah, tomorrow we got an offensive preview, and then Thursday's a defensive preview. I didn't know if you guys saw, but Bud Foster and Bojangles collaboration, thought that was pretty neat. You can go and
is it called Bud Box?
I don't know. I'm going to go order one today. I'm going to eat a whole lot of chicken because I think it's a family size tailgate thing, but I'm going to eat it. What else do we have cooking up for next week? Of course, game week, ready to roll. I can't believe it. I've been building a podcast set and got married this summer and haven't even thought about football, and here we go. I mean, we got to dive right in. And you mentioned the women's soccer program. That is a doubleheader. The men play number 3 Ohio State right before them at 6 o'clock on Thursday, and then the women play unranked Clemson. And the Hokies, by the way, should move up to top 12 later today if you look at the rankings and who lost in front of them. So fired up and excited to have the students back this Thursday, Friday, and we'll be ready to roll next week.
Oh, man, maybe I'm becoming
That's crazy. It's that time of year.
Maybe I'm becoming a cynical townie, but the students are back.
You are? Well, you're what, 25, 26 now?
This is my 9th year of living in the area, including when I was in school. So, yeah, apparently this is called a lunch pail big bow box.
That's kind of cool.
And it is like a family-sized meal at Bojangles that comes in a box that looks like a lunch pail.
Okay. So offensive preview tomorrow, Nick, correct? Wednesday, and then defensive on Thursday? Sounds good. Busy week here at TechSideline.com. And did I do okay with the mic today? I know you're pointing at me a little bit. Okay, off and on. We'll get there. We'll get there. So, yeah, well, that's okay. All right, appreciate you guys. For David Cunningham, Nick Brown, Andy Bitter, I'm Carter Hill. Thanks for tuning in. And we'll talk to you tomorrow for episode 430 of the Tech Sideline Podcast.